We have everybody we need. Got about 30 seconds. I think we can go ahead and get going. So I'll call the meeting to order. The first item is the agenda. I have an amendment to the agenda to add Terry and temporary facility on as item E, and the E, F, and G would move down. Are there any objections to that? If not, it'll stand approved as presented. Received the previous minutes. Are there any amendments to the minutes?
No, sir.
Hearing none, they will stand approved as presented. Chris, you're on.
Yes, sir. Thank you, guys. The first thing we're going to do is give a brief update based on the stuff that we presented last week or last month of how we're doing. In April, we had a really good month. We had 29,000 visitors. In my notes, we had $637,000 worth of revenue that month just from day visitors. Packages we sold 1,339 packages for $51,685. Katisha was Employee of the Quarter. I don't know if I mentioned that last time, but for her work on the packages, she earned the right to be Employee of the Quarter, which was well deserved. And Captain Stores continue to do well. We sold 820 in the month of April for at 79% sales towards the offering. So almost all of them sold every day. And that's with the staffing challenges in the ticket booth and putting people in the ticket booth that don't know what the Captain Store was for some of that month. So now that they're all pretty much briefed and understand what the tour is, they're selling even better this month. So that's a good sign. We got our first large check for them running an entire month just a few minutes ago. Allison shared it with me. So that was a good sign of what's to come with that Captain Store. It continues to do well. And Friends of the Fleet passes, in the month of April, we sold 55 passes for $3,700. And our goal for the whole 6-month period that we started through the end of the fiscal year was 60, and that wasn't just pulled out of air. That was a goal based on prior sales of memberships for that specific time, with an increase, I think, of 10 or 15%. So we're doing really well on the Friends of the Fleet passes. Changes to the team. I sat here last month and said, hiring is hard. We need help. And we still very much do, and hiring is still very difficult. We did hire a point of sales, a ticket booth manager. Her name is Verisa Parker. She will start July 2nd because she is teaching right now. She's a contract teacher with Berkeley County. She has a degree in teaching, a business degree in business administration, a doctorate in law, and I think another master's degree in business administration. So she currently works in our ticket booth part-time, has been doing that because based on her education, she gets bored easily and likes a challenge. So Heather actually hired her for the ticket booth, and she's done really well for many months, was our top upseller. She'll come in and lead the ticket booth charge, and anything she doesn't know, I'm pretty sure she'll learn it, and learn it pretty well. And one of her degrees is from the Citadel. She's local, so that's a win for that hire. Candidate specialist, front office support. Sis Rita is going through those applications, and I believe may offer that job to somebody today or tomorrow. Knowing Sis, I probably have an email in my inbox asking me for that approval, and hopefully we'll be able to announce that next month. Day group and camping sales specialist. This is a little tricky. This is one I'm hiring directly and have gone through a lot of the applications and have made phone calls, but the hiring level, the salary level for this position, like several others, they hear the range. When a job is posted online, you see a range, but the state only allow you to offer so much. We've learned to go ahead and have those tough conversations ahead of time and make them understand that we can't go above a certain level, because 2 or 3 times we've gone all the way through the process just to get to a point where we can't match what they're expecting, and we have to start all over again. And every time that happens, it's a month and a half wasted, completely gone. So I'm afraid that this may happen to this position, but we'll see where that goes. I had a tough phone call about that this morning. Ticket booth cashiers. We have hired one of the 5 vacant positions that we talked about last month. 2 are being processed. The person that we hired was through the staffing agency. We've learned that actually, it worked in a pinch, but it actually is better because we get to bring them on and learn whether or not they're a good fit for us. And if they are, we can process them over time and teach them what they need to learn. Some in the future may not work out, but in this case, 2 of them have been really good, and we're looking at the 3rd one, possibly bringing them on too. Once you engage a staffing agency, you need a certain amount of time before you can bring them on, so that staffing agency can make their cut. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. So if you're wondering why it's taking so long, that is why, and we still have one temporary employee. So that's where we're at with our open positions. This is a food truck, and it was taken here at Patriots Point. You can see the ship behind it a little bit. We've done really, really well. I would say this is Sis Rita's program, and she's really taken it head on and done a good job. In April, we offered trucks a 2 trial visit before signing MOUs with us with a 10% revenue share. We have 5 trucks that have signed MOUs, 2 that are pending, so they'll be coming on with us, and nearly a full schedule for the next couple months. And despite that being a revenue trial month, we do have some revenue coming in. Sis, you want to talk about it, please?
Yeah, cycling through for them to be with us regularly after their trial visits. So not every one of the 9 trucks was on revenue share in April, but we've collected $1,330 so far, with another check coming in this week. The biggest one was the ice cream truck. I was really pleasantly surprised. She sold $7,800 worth of ice cream here in April, and she said they'll do much better. It's not even hot yet, were her words. So that's the start. We will be making more, but that's with just 4 trucks.
And one of those trucks,
paying so far.
Mr. Narwhal's, which is a snow cone truck, acquired King of Pops, the company that does the lollipop or the frozen pops, that was out here before with the past Caterer, and so they'll be out here again. It's huge margins for them. They do really well, easy to sell.
Did Curator look at those MOUs?
No, sir. We went through Royce. They're very simple honor system type thing. There's not a lot of law to them, but if you want to, we're easy to do it. It's the auditing and tracking of their sales is nearly impossible other than taking their word for it. But we can pass it to him. It's probably a good idea. There's nothing binding to them other than making sure that they have their insurance that they need and things like that.
We just found when we delved into the New Year's Eve that the contracts were horrible.
Mm-hmm. I'll bring one with me tomorrow, and I'll give it to Bill and ask him to review it. And if we need to add things to it, if he thinks we'll rewrite it.
Give it to me. I'll
Okay.
give it to Bill.
Okay.
Just so I can
Sure.
tell him we don't want 4 hours.
I understand that. Day groups. I'm happy to show that our numbers are better, not great, nowhere near the past, but they're getting better. And if you look at this, it tells the whole story. So the amount of visitors in April, 358, May, 775, June, it falls off. It is not because they're not going to come. It's because it used to be in the past where they'd book with us and then come a month, 2 months, 3 months, a year out. They're calling and coming a week later sometimes nowadays. And so people are making choices to travel sporadically and based on what's open and what fits their requirements, and putting last minute plans together. So this is what we're seeing. They're booking within 2 weeks, and then we're getting ready to launch a new offering to give them. Right now, if they come, all we can give them is a self-guided tour, and that's it. We could do simulators. We can do, if they wanted to do a helicopter ride, we'd help arrange that. In small groups, we can do captain's tours if they fit in the schedule. But if we get a group of 200 seniors or 200 people that want to come and we don't have anything else to offer them, we can't do those things that go above and below and sideways or any of that. So what we did is we're putting together a tour that does hangar deck and flight deck. We're tossing around some ideas. Wings and Things is one I had. I'm biased on that. I keep pushing it. But basically, we can do a lot of we can accommodate a lot of different group sizes and go throughout mainly the planes and what they do. And so we took a pilot tour last Friday. We'll go into naming of it and then work on some of those details in the next couple of months. Hopefully launch in June, and we'll see how it goes from there. April marketing report. So our budget for April was. I'm sorry, it's Kevin. I didn't mention anything about groups. Can you talk about groups?
Yeah, well, I just kind of hit on the point that you talked about in regards to when they book. We kind of noticed a trend earlier in the year. People or groups were planning several months out in advance, basically. But that's, as Chris just mentioned, as we've gotten into the springtime a little bit, it's people are calling 2 weeks, 1 week. I took a call today. Have a small scout group. They're going to come in on Saturday. We normally try to do it 2 weeks in advance, but we don't want to turn them away. So if we can possibly help them, we will. And that's kind of where
And
we're
that
at.
leads us to your trip. So Kevin just recently got back from the only conference we attended all year, and it's nothing that was in this year's budget. It was something that was budgeted and already paid for last year. And of all places, it was in, I think originally it was supposed to be in Alaska.
That's correct.
So that was years in the making. We didn't go, it was canceled, then they canceled it again, and then they ended up having it again, and it was already paid for. The only cost to us this year was his lodging and food costs, which the foundation is covering for us. So we thought it was important that he continue to go to this one to figure out where the tour operators are and what kind of landscape is out there for groups.
Yeah, so it's the conference is a smaller conference within this association. There was about 50 tour operators, and there were other city CVB representatives and just other association colleagues, basically. Some of the same people that do what I do, with different companies, basically across the United States. And it was it's a 3-day gathering of classroom seminars, networking, and just learning about where we've all been in the last year or so and where we're going in the road to recovery, and exchanging ideas and thoughts and best practices, and learning how to be flexible and communicative, and also just set expectations for the people that are looking to come, because the previous times that they've come, we've had a lot more to offer, and we don't have that as much at this point. So you kind of have to set those expectations early on for that. And so we had a chance to do all that, and we were part of a tri-sponsorship with the Charleston CVB and Low Country Hotels Inc. for a sponsorship dinner that included a video presentation. We did 2 presentations, one over an overview of Patriots Point, and then the second one was a promotion on the captain's tour that we offer. And so it went over real well, and we were pleased to be there. And we got, as part of that sponsorship, we got a list of all attendees that are buyers, basically, and we're in the process of following up with them in terms of future bookings. And actually one of the attendees had already booked a group to come see us in October, basically. So it's a small start, but we're looking to push it forward.
And the video we showed, one of them, we call it our hype video. It's like a music video featuring the shifts with rock and roll, so it grabs your attention. But back to the April marketing. Thanks, Kevin. That was perfect. Again, these numbers are insane, and they're not mistyped, but again, think about the change in buying habits and the times year over year. E-commerce revenue is 552% higher. There's a 592% increase in visitors. And Google paid ads contributed to 15%, which is 2% more than it was last month. Facebook ads also 2% increase to 9%. Average online order increased by 14% to $76. That's great. And then rainy day, I told you that our agency has been really good, Crawford, about trying to figure out how to insert ourselves on off days. So not always saying that when it's rainy, may not do very well that day at the museum, but we can promote that our tickets are good for a year. And they have done really, really, really well. There's an example of them to the right. And then another thing that I thought was interesting is they had the idea to do, we've been trying to hire positions, so we did a few ads just for awareness of our jobs, and those led to some sales. It almost reminds me of a small pond, and you just throw a piece of bread in, you're going to grab a fish. So that's kind of like e-commerce has been for us lately. It's great now, but we know that winter is coming, if you will. We know that it's going to slow down as things start to reopen, as reservations aren't required. Our e-commerce numbers are going to go down, and when they go down, we're going to need to spend a little bit more money on advertisements. We did, for what we did last year, our spend, it's grand slam every time you look at it, but that won't continue to be the case, nor do we expect it to be. And so us being open in a large place really helped us a lot. Our cities didn't change. South Carolina's largest driver of revenue. Charlotte is our top city. Atlanta is second. Our media plan that we hope to share with you next month includes a lot more Charlotte area in it, especially as we bring back camping. We know that Charlotte is one of those major places. The stats, just easy for you to see them. It's all positive across the board. We increased almost everything. E-commerce conversion rate, the tickets sold per transaction was the only thing that decreased. Average order is up, revenue is up, unique purchases up. Again, March, April, May are some of our biggest months. These numbers are great, but kind of what we expect with the trends. Won't mislead you there. Sales sources, the organic search, people were 2% less likely just to go on their own and search for Patriots Point, which is good. That means our ads are working better to grab them because the numbers didn't go down. Our Facebook ad sales increased by 2.5%. Our Google search increased and direct traffic increased. That's an example of one of the ads promoting the Captain Tour and the access to the forecastle that people don't get on normal visits. The creative on our I-26 billboard looked terrible. We recreated that with the new sign that we put in Merle's Inlet. We did the same look here. The only thing that you don't see on this image that's there is we have a what do you call it, sis? The button that says the exit on it at the top?
Yeah, a little snipe or extension
snipe
at the top.
So we put that on our billboard, and this was paid for through the foundations, through our reimbursement of the PRT money. So these are things that were not in our budget this year that we used, reimbursements that live with the foundation. So I look forward to seeing that. Is it up there now? I know they were
Any
fixing
day,
to put it up there.
once it was approved, it was going to be up to 2 weeks.
We waited a little while
Anytime.
because we were going to do a share system with the Charleston Battery, and they kind of let us on a little bit that they were interested. They weren't interested. It was the start of their season, and we pulled the plug and said, well, we just got to do this. It's our busy season. So we may do that with them next year. And we're thinking a lot more of using digital boards and scattering them a lot next year too, that we'll get into next month. But this one is probably a third, if not more, closer to half of our entire marketing budget.
About 25%.
Yeah, it's 25% of our entire ad spend last year was this billboard on 26, which we're still going back and forth on how important it is. It's hard to ever get that spot again once you lose the rights to it, but it's the last thing. The aquarium had one up on us, and I think this is the first year they didn't do it, and they're back a couple exits, so we'll see. I know that was really brief and really quick, but I just wanted to give you an update based on the last month. What we're going to continue to do is work on the budget approval. Start that in a second with you. Finalize the media plan that will be based on the budget that you guys approve. Continue hiring our people, a sales specialist and a marketing assistant, front office person, building the ticket booth team out, and then when Vrisa starts really working on customer service and increasing that is one of the things that took a big hit with what we did, but we're able to open and sell tickets. 4th of July, Sis reached out. One of the perks of being in our food truck program is they got the first rights to be our food trucks for 4th of July. So you'll see a lot of the familiar trucks out there, and we're working on trying to figure out how we're going to do alcohol. And I think one of those trucks might take on the whole plan with us. We'll meet with them several times to make sure it's a sound plan. But through the distributor, you have to staff it. They can sell you the alcohol, but you'd have to staff it, and that's our major problem. And we're not going to hire, staffing company to sell alcohol. It wouldn't be the best plan. So I think that it's Mr. Nallwalls will take that. He's got a background in that. We're going to continue working on the marketing plan for camping. We've got a good budget to show you guys, which will create new creative for us. We hope to launch a rebrand and relook and new books and really make this an exciting new launch and a new chapter for that program whenever it comes time. So I've got some budgets to talk about for that. And then John Willman is just pumping out these YK TVs that in my opinion, are better than ever. We've got one coming up this month. They found one of the best exhibits on the ship is the cookie recipe, and they fed so many sailors cookies, and everybody stops and look at the huge mixers and all that stuff. Well, John and Macy had the idea of trying to find a local bakery that would recreate, to a smaller degree, take that recipe and make it on a smaller scale and see what the cookies would taste like 70, 80 years later. Well, they found a food truck out of Somerville that made them for us, and so John went out there and had them make the cookies and then brought them to us, and they were much better. I'm sure their ingredients themselves might have been finer, but they were really good cookies. So we're going to take those cookies, package them, and then Sis is going to use them for hotel concierge visits whenever we have special people here to say, hey, look, these are our cookies. And if we can lead that into maybe selling it in a gift shop or selling it with that food truck here on certain days for certain festivals, that's where we're looking. But that was all born out of John and Macy and some ideas. What I'm going to show you is our latest YK TV. Unfortunately, a Vietnam veteran of ours passed away earlier this spring. He was a helicopter medic pilot who was wounded in action, and he did a YKTV with Melissa on the use of medics in our Huey helicopter in the Vietnam, how it would have been used. And so I want to show that and kind of brag about their work a little bit, if you will, before we get into the budgets. And we launched that this past weekend, and it did well, but it was in his memory.
Hello and welcome to another Curator's Corner. I'm Melissa Buchanan. Today we're in the Vietnam experience, and behind me you have the UH-1 Iroquois. In April of 1962, the 57th Medical Detachment Helicopter Ambulance arrived in Vietnam with 5 UH-1 Huey helicopters. They took the call sign Dust Off. Over time, the number of medevac detachments grew in Vietnam until the entire country had coverage, and Dust Off became the universal call sign for all medevac missions. The patient came first, and that applied to all wounded, Americans, South Vietnamese, and even the Viet Cong. American and Allied seriously wounded during the Vietnam War had the highest survival rates among wounded soldiers from any conflict in history to that time. If you weren't killed outright, Dust Off was almost always able to get you to an aid station. A Dust Off crew consisted of 4, 2 pilots, a medic, and a crew chief. Usually one pilot would fly the helicopter while the other acted as the aircraft commander. The commander would navigate, monitor all of the radio transmissions, talk to the unit requesting the medevac,
Request dust off, request dust off.
and would take over flying if the pilot were injured. The medic kept the helicopter stocked with necessary medical supplies, and the crew chief would maintain the helicopter in top working condition. They would both load the patients onto the helicopter, and the medic would administer any necessary treatment on the way to the hospital, often with the help of the crew chief. The medic and crew chief would stay with a particular helicopter while the pilots were interchangeable between helicopters. The Dust Off crews saved many lives and were highly respected by all soldiers throughout the war.
My name's Pat DeWeese. I was a medic on a helicopter in Vietnam in 1968 and 69. That was my bird. Well, I wasn't that particular bird, but it was just like it. When I arrived in Vietnam, I was in 44th Medical Brigade, which was attached to the 95th Evacuation Hospital. On my 91st day, we went out and we were on picking up some wounded in a hot LZ. And we had one litter patient on board. I jumped out to help a walking wounded soldier on board, and when I was putting him on board, I got hit in the back of the leg. And on Veterans Day, we get all duded up back in our jungle fatigues and hard hats and everything, and it's a big deal here at the museum. So I worked the medevac helicopter over there.
Thank you for watching another Curator's Corner. See you next time you visit Patriots Point.
So Pat, the very first day that we opened the Vietnam experience, he was out there, and I remember meeting him, and he was out there next to that helicopter, and over the years you could see his health deteriorate. It's sad. Tom, were you over there? Did you say that it was Agent Orange or something?
It was due to Agent Orange.
Is what cost him his life later on. So that we were happy to be able to put that video together. But the next one will be the cookie recipe that I know John is pretty close to. Maybe tomorrow we'll be able to send it out and kind of look at it this afternoon. But moving on to the budget for next year. Here I have a breakdown for you. There's a summary sheet, and on the back end is a comparison year over year. For me, most of it is ad spend. On this slide up here, I broke it down because those things are hard to read and it's difficult. But fiscal year 21, without salaries, was $298,000. Without contractual services and ads, so 209, which is agency, binding, printing, all the stuff that comes with promoting our museum that are pretty much fixed costs no matter if there's COVID or not. Our budget for the spend was only $13,245. We didn't do office supplies, we didn't do AV equipment, we didn't send anybody to travel. It was as bare bones as you can get. And if you look at my budget, I am going to spend every penny of it, if not more. And if it wasn't for the foundation and being able to use the PRT reimbursement, we would have went way over. So I basically, this last couple months, almost all of my bills are going right to that, and we're spending it that way so that we can keep running the ads that we need to do. The proposed budget for next year without salaries is $477,000. Without ads, is $37,565. So my total budget, if you add in the salaries and all of the ads, it's almost exactly what it was fiscal year 21. But you can't. It's impossible to look at that because the salaries don't tell a story. I put them in there because it's important to see where we were in fiscal year 19 before COVID. But that really tells you the story. In advertising, the largest proposed increase in my budget is for the ad spend. So in this case, it's $85,000 was the ad spend for this year. And then on the budget that you see, when you see the summary comparison sheet, you see 0212 promotional services. Rob liked to put money in 0212 for Facebook ads and for social media ads and those things. You'll see that is gone in proposed fiscal year 22 because that really belongs in advertising money. So it comes in the same ad pot for the media plan. So that's a big shift. So you may see a much bigger number in 0209, but that's part of the reason is that just moved a different line. So we spent $85,000 for advertising last year. 30,000 of that came from the Foundation for PRT money. In fiscal year 22, we proposed spending $160,000 to promote the museum and additional $30,000 for camping ads, which I'll get to a complete breakout in a minute. Supplies and material in fiscal year, I should get to where these numbers come from. I didn't just pull them out. What I did is I took 5% of our revenue projections for next year will be 60% revenue based on a solid year. So of that, I took out leasing and I took out the leases that we get, and I took out camping because we don't advertise for those two. The camping will be a separate program. And then I took 5%. And so my goal was to make the marketing, the 209 or the 0200 line match that. So it was $265,000. We was able to do that. I went $10,000 over for the proposed amounts to give us some flexibility in case something came up and we needed to advertise that. So that's why if you see 209 on right here, it is proposed for that amount. The supplies and materials in fiscal year 21, we didn't buy any promotional supplies. We didn't buy any cups. We didn't buy any koozies. We didn't buy any flashlights. We didn't buy any of those things because we didn't travel. We didn't go. So anything we did, we used what we have, which leaves us very little for this year. As people start going to festivals and doing those things, we won't have very much to give out. There was also a very small budget of $2,000 for office supplies. We're proposing to increase over last year by $14,500 to make up for those things, especially because as we bring in new people, there's new computers, new software, new desks, new chairs, those kind of things. Not a complete rewipe where everybody's getting new things, but just where it's needed. And then training and travel. Due to the drastic turnover, there's training needed almost everywhere, especially when it comes to ticket booth or Galaxy and database and all those kind of things. This morning, I really didn't know the appetite for travel putting this budget together. I almost didn't put anything in there. If there's an appetite for sales travel, we can go a lot more. We can put a lot more in there. I don't have any inkling or any desire to go back to the $150,000, $100,000 range that we were doing before. I think that there was a lot of fat that we can cut there and go to conferences and sales calls and require reports for each one of those, just like Kevin did. What sales came from it, and then year over year we could tell which ones are good and which ones are bad. We had tended to just keep adding and not taking anything away. If we went to a trip one year, we did it the next year, and we were afraid that maybe a number would fail. But that's what the opportunities that COVID presents us, is that we can pick and choose what we want to do without having to worry about reaching last year's number. A lot of these things are new, and a lot of those organizations were decimated by COVID. People stopped going, tour operators went out of business. What'd you say, like 2/3 of the tour operators? What? I thought
a good percentage of them, they were wiped out, and some of them are still going, and some of them are starting over, and some of them are done and going about a different career, basically.
So some of the other finer things I want to pull out is in 0211 photographic and AV services. That is for photo shoots. If we need to do that, the estimate I got for that was in the $80,000 range. I don't think that we need that. I think that we can do it for much cheaper here locally. So what I'm proposing is for $15,000 for that. We also have, as our departments work so well together, Jim Vickers, all the pictures you see, that very bright prop picture at the beginning of our presentation, that was a Jim Vickers photo. He does really well going out and getting us what we need when we need it, and he's saved our department thousands and thousands of dollars every year in photography. He's really good at what he does. Other than that, other contractual services is one where you may not understand what that is because it's so vague, but that's things like X2O, which is the playing system that John Willman can use in the theater to play videos and change the content there. It's a lot cheaper than it used to be because we don't have a video board above the info desk, but we still need a player to play those remotely, make sure that it runs properly. Vimeo, the things that we're live streaming on right now, like comes with the cost. TVIs, which is the TV earned media reporting. I've cut Meltwater, which is the print reporting. It's too expensive, and for what it's worth, I think you guys will trust me when we come to reporting of earned media. I don't think it was worth the amount of money that we're paying. I cut Bitly, the link tracking service. So I really did try to cut some of the things that we don't use, or maybe we were using it. It was great to have, but we don't need it. For the camping budget, it was $56,000 that is inserted into this budget, and the various lines, whether it be, actually, I say various lines, it's all in 209. It's printing, it's ad. $30,000 of that is for ads for just flat camping. That's 3% of a proposed $1 million revenue for that program. $26,000 of that 56 is for printing and binding and booklets and all of the material we need to take with us if we go to sales call or to sell the program. And again, like the museum advertising budget, that's based on a set ratio where it's 3 to 5%. So in this case, the $30,000 would be 3% of $1 million, hopefully, that we would get in revenue for the program. And then $26,000 wouldn't be needed for every year, but to relaunch, that's based on estimates I got from our agency for a new booklet, for a new sales sheet, and for things like that. That number is not made up. I have estimates to back that, and I think that I wouldn't want to go any lower than that if we want to make a big splash with camping and with the rebrand. I think we can do more, and if you guys want to make more of an investment, we can. I've put this together to show you what the return is as we spend it. So for every one of those dollar bills you see on the screen on this slide, that the bottom part is the return on it. So in January we spent that in advertising, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.5. We got that much below on the return on that. So look at March, and you can see how much farther we're making that go. So if you look at the advertisements, I ask you that you don't look at it as just, paper and pencils, but an investment of something that we'll get immediately in return. Here's April. You can see the spend and what we got as a return on that spend, and in May, what we have done so far. So I'll continue to do these so that you can see, and we can find that point. I'm not going to keep asking you for more money. If we get to a point where we're not seeing the same return, then we need to cut back, and I'll be the first to say that. But I think that next year, as places reopen, reservation systems go away, people aren't going to websites to see COVID, we're going to have to work a lot harder to get people to our website. And so that's why I'm asking you guys to let us spend more money in ads. And that's really the basics of our budget. There's not a whole lot more to spend other than ad money.
Questions?
Yeah, would you explain that? Just kidding. No, that's very good. It's very impressive.
Thank you.
Good. I don't have any questions either. Great, good job.
Thank you.
We covered everything, didn't we? Terry, you're on.
All right. Well, thank you for the opportunity, and sorry I don't have nearly the
I kind of took your whole area.
the presentation that Chris has. I mean, that was marketing guys, media and all that type of stuff as well. Wanted to just talk briefly about temporary office facilities. We're not at the point of having to make a decision yet, but as we continue to get a month closer to both notice and having to do something, what I've been continuing to do is reach out and stay abreast of what our options are. I briefly mentioned that we had probably 4 general options, and those included a move for the landside offices off campus. That's still an option with traditional office space. There is more of a vacancy within office buildings right now. A lot of people got accustomed to working from home, and they've realized that they can continue to do that, or offices can continue to lease, but they need less space. So we have some options. That's going to vary depending on what time we need to look at or pull a trigger or get finally detailed information on it. But we would probably be in the all-in range of $30 a square foot to probably $36, $37. And that would include a base rent with the operating pass-throughs as well, or a full service rent. We could probably likely negotiate for a 1 or 2 year term and be able to extend if we need to, based on the amount of time that we need to be gone. The downside of that still is disconnects that group of people from the campus, and it makes some of what we are able to do here a little more difficult, and then deliveries in 2 different places and some duplication of efforts and services. We have the opportunity as well to look at perhaps and a kind of a 2-step approach with the initial phase of development. And I brought this got the full development with Patriots Annex, but in the initial phase of development, what will occur is infrastructure goes throughout to service the ultimate project, but it'll be limited to restricted areas and kind of narrow corridors where utilities and those type of things roll. But the first phase includes the Grand Hotel, includes this avenue, and these couple of buildings here for retail and kind of service office. It also includes the amphitheater. There's an ability, if we wanted to, for a net number that would be less than being off campus, to be a tenant in one of these buildings that Bennett Hospitality builds in the Patriots Annex. In order to do that, we'd still have to do a short-term move, and when I say short-term, kind of really short-term in a matter of months or that type thing, not a matter of years, to accommodate some of the infrastructure move and some of the build to go here. In a scenario like that, we could trade off some ground lease rents for office space rents, and the net would be, first we didn't end up in new space and kind of tailored to what we need. We'd stay on campus, and our net number of monthly outflow would be smaller than going off campus. To do that, we'd likely still need to eliminate the landside structures. The possibility is we could move one to the parking lot, part of the employee parking lot, and utilize that in a very interim, 6-month type scenario, 6-8 month scenario before moving into this, and then it goes away. The other alternative would be those would have to go away. We'd have to make some scenario or some temporary arrangement, whether that's coming to
Yorktown. Talking about the admin side?
Yes. But we could move temporarily, have those go, move to the offices to the Yorktown on a short-term basis, and then put those positions back in here. Not ideal, requires a couple of moves, but it's an option. We have a third option, which is we have batted around a little bit more in terms of putting up a temporary facility, and I apologize that I don't have something on a slide to show you better, but we've talked in the past, and I'll put these where you can see them a bunch. We've got the ability to do a variety of things and have a variety of looks in a controlled environment and at a price that's less than traditional build. You can go with something that is as institutional as this, or something that is a little more low country flavored along these lines, and something that even is a little more industrial, or even ties back to the Quonset hut. I think this kind of scenario is not so great, nor is this, but these are options that are appealing, that I think are welcoming, that could make a decent presence for a period of time. They come with a cost, and that cost, like everything right now, is climbing. Our most recent conversations with 5 different manufacturers around the Southeast, and not immediately South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina, but extended out a little further, are all currently undergoing the same scenarios that we're hearing about, reading about in the building industry. All of the lumber and wood, and now starting to get some of the finished prices are up. The lumber prices are 2.5 to 3 times their normal cost, and what that does is takes, we've got an average number of $100 a square foot before infrastructure tie-ins and foundation setups. But it takes that number and pushes it to about 140 to 150. The other two things that come along with that is no one is willing to give you a quote that they will hold firm on longer than 30 days. So it's kind of a rolling deal. We talked to somebody today, we get a number that's good for a 30-day strike, and that's it. It's kind of a good and bad. We don't have to make that call right now. The experts seem to think that once the manufacturers catch back up with full production, ultimately they'll start to meet the demand, and the supply will level out and prices will get back down. But it is one of those things. The other thing is the demand and the orders that are ahead of a new order push this thing out a little ways further. So while you can generally get these things delivered, constructed, erected, and occupied in about 12 weeks, getting considerable cost savings and time savings, now all of that kind of pushes out a little bit further. So we'll continue to monitor that. But the savings of being able to do this versus something else and doing it on a temporary basis start to diminish a little bit right now. The kind of the fourth option that gives us probably the most flexibility and the least cost, and probably almost a wash in terms of operating costs, would be utilizing office space on board the Yorktown. The Iridicio spaces will be unoccupied, freed up at the end of June, and their continued use of the LTF or other meeting space will be like any other vendor coming in through contract dates and those types of arrangements. But those spaces are available. We have the docent offices that are available, and the spaces on board the ship lend themselves to have groupings or clusters for marketing and or accounting and administrative type scenarios. You know, the upside, I guess, is we have the space. A lot of it is ready to be moved into, and the others would take very little time and effort to get ready. Operating costs are kind of a wash, really, from there to here. It does make it a little more difficult on deliveries needing to come down the pier, but we can accommodate that. And it doesn't give us the landside presence that we currently have right now. These options are all kind of fluid. I'm expecting that we'll probably fourth quarter of this year, of 2021, get the notice from Ben Hospitality that we'll have then the 12 months before they get started. So, pardon me?
17 months.
Right. So there's that's right. We'll get that advance
We'll
notice.
have 17 months.
That's right. So I expect we'll get that notice in the fall, end of third quarter or probably fourth quarter this year, to be able to make their commencement start date.
Which fits with the lease. We have to be out by April of 23.
January 20. That's right. 3 months
after they start.
That's right.
They commence. So here's my thing. I mean, it sounded to me like you're focusing a lot on office space, and I really don't care about that personally. I mean, we can figure that one out. That was a piece of cake, I think. I mean, just select an option and let's go.
Okay.
What concerns me is admissions and Fort Sumter Tour Spirit Lines, whatever you call it, and those things, and the gift shop. We can't, in my opinion, particularly admissions, I don't see it coming to the ship.
That's correct.
And so what are we going to do about that? How much space do we need for this? We know that the gift shop would be better off out there, particularly if we can control entrance and exit and egress through it. Certainly helps sales. So that's what we've got, in my opinion. It's just my opinion, but when I look at it, we got to deal with that.
Right.
And where are we going to put it? Because if we're going to build at some point on that 2-acre plot we have, parcel, probably don't want to put it there, since we know we're going to clear that at some point. Got what about, how much, what's the square footage of the gift shop? About 6,000?
It's just over 5.
Just over 5? How much space does admissions take?
Very
Spirit
little.
line.
Between the two booths, very little. It's
1,000 feet.
even less than that probably. The room is needed for lines, making sure that we have enough room to accommodate large lines.
Like
300 feet, square feet. Yeah.
200. It's so tiny.
So the 5,000 for the gift shop, does that include storage area?
Storage, exactly. Storage and the floor.
So we know that if we want
And
to,
they're
I mean, we could, I guess,
They
shrink
have
that a
office
little bit if
spaces
we
too.
needed to. So we've got to have we're looking at, got to have a 6,000 square foot-ish facility land side, right? Is that not, am I wrong on that?
That's right, and our most recent meetings with Bennett Hospitality, in looking at these scenarios, and I probably should have made that clear to start with. They believe that they can, for the most part, spare that building, the building that has the gift shop and Spirit Line Cruises and the ticket booth, with some alteration. But they believe, for the most part, they can leave that intact. The office, the office trailers are the things that are more in line with where they need to bring it in. And if we had to do some modification, it would be somewhat simple, or maybe come off of the back and swing around, but modifying that building as opposed to that going away and something new happening.
So how long could they leave that intact?
For most of the infrastructure work coming in, they would be able to. Most of the infrastructure comes back through this corridor. So this can stay there. There's some already that ties in and comes back through here, but they believe that for the most part they could leave this intact while the infrastructure work's being done, which will take a good little while, which would give us enough time to do something else. But there is the consideration to keep this the building Spirit Line Cruises and to have that gift shop open and at the head of the pier has always been part of what Bennett's been looking to do. So they're sensitive to that. This area, was more where we're looking at, kind of the office space. But you're right, office space we can be out here. It doesn't matter. This needs to be at the head of the pier, and so still kind of refining and working through.
Well, you said, so the amphitheater is part of this first phase.
That's right. That's right.
Well, is that not where our gift shop is?
It's right in here. The gift shop's right in here, and the amphitheater sits a little further in. And he'll start with a hotel and then work from here back that way.
We could also make up some revenue too, Wayne. There's an opportunity with taking some of that gift shop online. That's a low-hanging fruit if we had the right people. And we could do with a smaller gift shop and an online version too.
But I'm sure that the sales with people
People
leaving,
ask for that a lot.
Yeah, they go through it.
We
It's a
definitely
great
want
exit.
one here.
Right.
But there's a huge opportunity in taking that online.
Mm-hmm. But the working conversation with Bennett Hospitality right now is to preserve that space and modify slightly that as a separate scenario for accommodating our office needs. So keep that at the head of the pier. We figure out what we need to do with our office areas, and they work around that infrastructure.
So, if we were able to do that, I mean, it certainly, we still at some point have got to deal with that anyway.
From a permanent standpoint.
Yeah.
That's right.
And we're sort of at their mercy as to when we do it.
Terry, did you say I'm sorry if I misheard myself, but I thought about it. The Quonset hut, you said that's not way
phase 5.
That's a structure that we could repurpose for a time being if we wanted to into a gift shop or admissions building.
That thing's not big enough, is it?
It's probably not.
No.
It's 2,500.
2,300 feet. You got the theater in there. You have to rip out. It's just I don't want to go into too much, but it's about 2,250. I don't want to lie.
Right.
So not quite 2,300 square feet. It's not too big for storage and then running a shop, and then they need office spaces as well. It'd be daunting.
So do these buildings come in pieces?
They do. They're producing a
So it's a
controlled setting.
modular unit.
That's right.
So, and once they're here, they couldn't be moved around.
They can, but you set them up more or less permanently, but there is residual value. You disassemble and you've got some value on the back end. It's not as easy as, you know, disconnecting and wheeling, you know, somewhere like a mobile type
You
office.
just listen a few screws. Yeah.
So it takes a little more. But Wayne, I would agree with you. The office part is it's something that we look at for convenience or what we need to have to accommodate us. But the gift shop and the head of the pier, those structures and that operation of Fort Sumter Tours is where we will focus our conversations with Ben on moving forward and how that first phase happens and how we work around that.
One thing that when I went to somewhere else, another ship and visited, they did have, and then also I saw this in another museum in London, they had their gift shops divided into sort of subject matter. Like there was, for instance, on one of the ships, they had these bomber jackets and period clothes and hats and all that kind of stuff on the ship. And then there was a snack bar, kind of like where ours is, and that might have had a different item in it, maybe books, or even it was themed. Like part of it was aircraft-oriented gifts or books or whatever. And so they spread out their inventory according to, you know, a system of some kind of subject matter almost. And depending on what we were to do that with that Yorktown bar or whatever you call it, that little restaurant thing is no longer there. Whatever had happened there, I just wonder if there'd be space to sit down and rest and have something to drink and then have some kind of gift portion there of something. I mean, you have to have somebody who knew what they were doing to figure out what should go where. But I saw plenty of people either carrying packages or checking them. You know, if they didn't want to carry them around, they went and bought them, but didn't carry them necessarily to check them. And I mean, I did it too. Because it's like, okay, well, I might not come back this way, so I'm gonna go ahead and put it now. While I'm looking at it. So I don't know if if we've got enough space to handle some of that, so that this space might not require as many square foot of gifts. But I do think, you know, that people were shopping, you know, with those little different things in every one of them.
Do we have plenty of information on inventory and how it moves in the gift shop?
I couldn't answer that with
I'm
any
sure
granular fidelity as far as
Sam
What
knows,
you're saying is no one else knows.
other than Sam, maybe Royce knows her. I don't. I certainly don't.
One thing was that all of them seemed to have was sort of, part of it would be a library. And that would might be stationery, cards, and then your book selections and all that in it. And they carried an inventory of whatever was in that museum. And I saw a lot of people buying books. I guess it's souvenirs, but maybe a planner or somebody that's in that business might have some ideas.
the only comment I've had this discussion briefly with Royce discussing this and what about the gift shop and trying to push a square peg in a round hole, and it's just a data point. He says that surprisingly the biggest selling items in the gift shop are Charleston related. Mm-hmm. Charleston, not Yorktown or military or jets or Navy or airport. Charleston. Anything to do, postcards, sweatshirts, stuff, Charleston-y things, touristy things. Mm-hmm. Then the next is, they do move a lot of the, Navy and USS whatever hats, and that's a big seller, but without hands down. I don't know. I found that surprising. I don't know why.
Because when I went to them Imperial War Museum in London, that was one thing that was in every gift shop everywhere was the royalty stuff, because that's the big seller. You know, and so we might even sell more of it if you spread it out. It's kind of hard to see in there a little bit.
Sort of wrap this up, I guess. I guess the thing that concerns me the most is that we still don't know what we're doing, and I don't see that being defined anytime soon, and that concerns me. I mean, we're you know, that could change depending on how quickly he decides to deal with this, that, or the other. I guess we still rely on the 17 months, but if he gives us a 17-month notice in October, we're on the clock. I mean, I think, I guess it's an easy decision if we have that space and can keep it.
Right.
For a while, until we can build. But otherwise, I think we need to know what we're going to do. It just seems to me, if that's not the case. And you know, in the office space, I mean, from my perspective, that's something to be dealt with pretty quickly. I mean, you know, certainly easily within 17 months.
Right.
Whatever. And I mean, they have said informally, very informally before, that they'd be flexible on that. Of course, letting us stay in the gift shop there would certainly be being flexible. So I mean, maybe that's what we can look at, but we need to somehow try to define that with them. Maybe we can't do that right now, but.
Well, I think we can have those discussions. In fact, I can set up a meeting with them specifically to talk about this, about the need to preserve it, what that looks like, and you know, more details about how that's accomplished, to try to report back to the board next month.
You know, because it's certainly, I mean, this is sort of a chicken or egg kind of thing, you know, because it's certainly to our benefit to get that development developed.
Right.
You know, so we don't want to impede that unduly, for sure. Okay. Anything else? You got any other questions on this? Gary, anything else?
No, sir.
Thank you. Well, Allison, I think we're to you.
Ready to talk about some bricks?
I'm sorry, I could have slid Terry behind you so you could sneak out.
No, you're good. I'm just gonna sit them out. So we probably bounced this around in the past. It's been floating for a while. We're still way out front on this. And what we're talking about is a legacy brick program. You guys have seen them everywhere, where you can purchase the bricks with your name on them and in entry areas, and they're really very popular and great fundraisers. So what we would like, I've met with Terry and Mike, and there's some examples of what that looks like, but you know, you've seen them. You guys may have even bought a brick at some point for something. So we have an opportunity, as all this construction is happening, to incorporate a legacy brick program into the new construction. So I know we have a limited amount of space that belongs to Patriots Point. It's the 1.2 acres, but it's a significant amount of space because it's the entry point, which is typically where these sorts of things are located. So I just really wanted to just go ahead and start the conversation, because the only thing that we need to ask of you right now is just if you like the idea and the board likes the idea, as Terry moves forward and everyone moves forward with the landscape architects and the conceptual drawings for the entry, they just need to know that that's going to be a part of it. So there's a lot of details to work out about it. There are a lot of specifics. We've done a lot of homework on finding out, you know, how much you can raise, and it varies on how big the area is. You have a lot of latitude about how much you charge for the bricks. These are typically very successful. I've got a pretty solid estimate that we could probably have a net revenue somewhere between 500 and 800,000. We could run the program through the foundation or do it through Patriots Point, whatever works. But the only thing we need to figure out right now is really if you all would like to do it, if we'd like to see something like this.
So where's this envisioned? I assume on our 2 acres or whatever? It would be on our property?
That's another discussion point, but in general, be right at the head of the pier and probably work into either side, kind of, you know, more of a square opened area here and then stretched out on either side of that entrance. And that'd be a coordination plan with Bennett as well.
I think we would have great success. I think there are so many organizations and people that are so connected to the museum in so many different ways, and veterans groups and on and on and on. People love these programs. They're so great because these companies really do a lot of the heavy lifting. It doesn't require a lot of staff work on our part, since that's always a challenge for us. But people love to be able to come and see the brick, and you can get various and sundry sizes. You could even, have an opportunity to do a $10,000 fountain. There's just a real range of choices. So I can get you all. I'm happy to send you, some different images of different places, but we just didn't get. It's really not that far at all. It's just if you like the idea of doing a program like this.
I like it. It's a good idea.
So some of the memorial gardens like that I've visited sometimes, and I guess I would want to know where all they could go, because it's really nice. For example, I went to one, I don't remember what group, the military group it was, but they had a sundial. And so the people that were, whatever that group was, let's say it was Vietnam veterans or something, that's where theirs were put kind of as a group. And then there were different features, like even a small rose garden. Just so I don't know if that's a thing to talk to Bennett about, what his plans are for any of those quiet, reflective spaces like that. But you almost end up like a garden.
I think so too. And the other place that Terry had mentioned was the Amphitheater. I mean, if he would be willing, to work with us on that, that would be a wonderful spot. So people can walk up and see it. But I like, Susan, I agree. Like, you could do areas for Vietnam veterans.
We almost started doing it already, the Cold War Memorial with those benches. There's 100 of them.
Benches at their own brick.
Yeah, I mean, everybody wants a bench.
I just put one in yesterday. So I think that this is we did a few discussions about this. They are wildly popular, and they explode. Some campaigns last, they say minimum of 18 months because you need at least that much lead time, because when they pick up steam, everybody wants them. There's one museum, the Museum of the United States Army, started 7 years ago, and they've sold over 100,000 bricks, just exploding on us. So you've got to give yourself, and I think this marries up nicely with our timeline, enough breathing space to develop the program. And there's several companies that do these things. It's not like it's a unique business. There's a couple out there that do it really well. But everything from sporting venues to museums and whatnot. Again, once you start advertising, everybody wants the darn things.
Well, even just around the Gold Star.
For sure.
I've got a couple of bricks for my children at Moultrie Middle School.
Right.
Same thing with the new school.
But I guess step one would be to figure out what do you want, a garden idea, or just a platform of bricks as a pathway, or do you want to space them around, or do you want to pay tribute to different kinds of people?
That's right. And I think, as the designers, as the architects and landscape architects start to look at what you all are doing, those are all things that need to be hashed out, because you could do anything.
But I'd like to suggest, is Allison on the agenda tomorrow? On the agenda tomorrow?
I'm not. I don't know. I don't think so. I can't do.
Why don't we put her on there? I don't think so.
She is not on there, no sir.
Could you do that to the rest of the board tomorrow?
Sure, gladly.
Real quick.
Absolutely. And like I said, Mike and Terry and I have had a lot of conversations about this, just bringing them up to speed.
And I think all we need to do, it seems, is just say, yeah, we like this, let's go.
Concept.
And then y'all come back with a plan.
And I know we don't have a lot of information, but that was intentional. Is that?
That's fine.
Okay.
I can't imagine we would not want to do it. But.
Yeah, I don't know if they're still here, but when PGAV did that conceptual master plan, which didn't happen, That was one of the things, and one of the ideas was there's so many historic groups that don't have places to celebrate anniversary days. So let's say the DAR or something, you know, wanted to put in a rose garden or sundial or whatever, then all of a sudden they can come to that spot for their anniversary and stay in the hotels, visit the ship. But it was a big synergy to bring, you know, to connect to these groups.
Absolutely.
Like that. And that was where the planning of it came in. And the other thing they said was somebody had figured out, and I think this was Vince Graham that did this earlier than that plan. I'm not going to say that one. I'm not going to tell that again. But anyway, he had some kind of formula, and maybe you can look it up, that a person will walk XYZ steps or distance. And he talked about the you know, to get around this property, it's a lot of walking. And so you'd want to, you know, space out things where they could stop and, you know, and just, and that kind of thing, you know, just kind of a reflective space or donut shop or whatever. But that was a big thing that they said have this as tracks, these historic groups that don't necessarily have a place to celebrate.
And that helps our visitors, our visitor numbers.
So if you'll,
yes, sir.
if you're willing to
I'll bring my bricks.
show us the bricks, you can probably leave them here overnight.
We'll leave them right here.
I hope you weren't going to ask me.
I mean, Chris was so nice to carry a couple of big ones up.
Okay. Any public comments? Hearing none, we'll stand adjourned. Thank you.